Thank you. And it was very good to hear about this effort from the National Library of Germany, because what I'm going to be talking about is also related to this very much. My name is Alicia Fagerving, and I'm a developer at Wikimedia Sweden, the Swedish chapter of the Wikimedia Foundation. And I must say it has been really fun listening to all the presentations yesterday and today, because pretty much everyone mentions Wikidata. It's great to hear that a lot of you already use Wikidata in some capacity. And in my talk, I would like to give you some more insight in what a project that is centered around Wikidata might look like. Next slide. First of all, what is our role as a Wikimedia chapter in this sort of partnership with cultural heritage institutions? Wikimedia Sverige is, as I said, the regional chapter of the Wikimedia Foundation. There are many such chapters around the world, such as in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in Germany, and in France. And our mission is to promote the use and creation of free knowledge so that as many people as possible have access to it and are knowledgeable about what it takes to create and spread it. And in order to achieve that, we work very closely with cultural heritage institutions such as museums and libraries, but also with the educational sector, schools and universities, and so on. Next slide. And what we do is we help them understand not only how to use the Wikimedia projects, such as Wikipedia and Wikidata, but also we empower them and give them tools and training so that they can turn from passive consumers to active contributors. Next slide. And of course, the reason why we focus on Wikidata so much is that it is a free and open project that anyone can use, edit, and also the data can be freely reused for any purposes because it's all available under an open license, CC0. Next slide. And Wikidata is quite big, even though it's quite a young project. Wikidata will be turning 10 years old in October, 29th October, I think. And well, last I checked, it had 99 million items. You can probably check right now if we have already reached 100 million, or that will be happening very soon. Next slide. And it's a global project, it's multilingual. English is not considered more important than any other of the about 300 languages that are represented there. And all the items, all the labels and descriptions can be in any language, and it's very easy for everyone to add labels and descriptions that are missing in their language. Next slide. And the most amazing thing about Wikidata is that it is a collaborative project, just like Wikipedia. The Wikidata community is represented all around the globe, and all these items are created and edited by volunteers who speak a lot of languages and have a lot of different experiences. Next slide. And of course, as a database should be, it's readable by both humans and machines. And the easy access to the data makes it possible to retrieve the data and to reuse it, to analyze it, to examine it, but also to build applications that visualize or explore or present that data in different ways. And that is also something that is made possible by the fact that all the data is completely free under a CC0 license. Next slide. And of course, the data on Wikidata is all linked and structured and can be queried. It has a SPARQL endpoint, and there is a visual interface that you can connect to and test the example queries to get a little more insight into how the data is structured. My favorite example query in that interface is the one that is first one in the list, where you get all the cats that have items in Wikidata. And that's a lot of cats. Next slide. And of course, on the one hand, we have the thousands of volunteers that edit Wikidata all around the world. But we couldn't have created 100 millions of items by hand. And that's where large-scale imports of freely licensed data are important. And I'm highlighting that the data has to be free and open, because since Wikidata has an open license, then all the data that is imported needs to have a license that is compatible. But we know that a lot of cultural heritage institutions do have large and free data sets, and they have contributed with a lot of data to Wikidata. Next slide. And here I'm focusing on a project that we at Wikimedia Sweden are doing right now with two large prominent Swedish museums. That is the Nationalmuseum, which is an art museum, and Statens historiska museer, which is a history museum. And they have been very interested and very involved in working with the Wikimedia platforms for a long time, which is why it's been particularly exciting to take it to the next step. Next slide. So the project that we are working on is called Usable Authorities for Data-Driven Cultural Heritage Research. The project is financed with a grant from the Swedish National Heritage Board. It spans over 3 years, and the goal of this project is to investigate whether vocabularies as linked data stimulate new data-driven research on museum collections, and whether Wikidata is a suitable platform for linking different authority files and vocabularies. And I bet that a lot of you who use Wikidata in your work are also facing the same question: to which extent is Wikidata a usable platform, and to which extent it should be used. Next slide. So in practice, there are two big building blocks in this project. First of all, the museum's authority files contain a lot of data about the people, objects, events, and places that are represented in the museum's collections. And that data is being uploaded and linked to Wikidata, but also links to the Wikidata items are being added to the museum's own systems as identifiers. And the next step, which I think is maybe even more important, is to visualize the data to make it interesting, to show unexpected connections, and to see whether all that data that is already on Wikidata can be used to stimulate new data-driven research. Because, well, what is the point of having a lot of data if nobody looks at it and nobody can make any use of it? Next slide. So the way we work, there is a small project group with a couple of staff members from each of the museums. And they had some previous knowledge and experience from editing the Wikimedia projects. And we at Wikimedia Sweden have been providing support and training about all the things that they had to learn before they could become active Wikidatans, such as how it works, how the community makes decisions, how to access and query the data in Wikidata, and how to use OpenRefine to clean up and edit the data on Wikidata. Next slide. OpenRefine, which I also know some of you use and like, is really a magical tool for this purpose. It's an open source software with which you can analyze large data sets, clean them up, reconcile them with Wikidata, and if you need it, also upload it to Wikidata. And OpenRefine has a community all around the world, and it has, I think, a very good documentation, which is not always a given when we're talking about open source software, but the documentation of OpenRefine is really impressive and comprehensive. Next slide. It turned out that OpenRefine proved a very useful tool for the internal work of the project group, because before they could upload the data to Wikidata, they had to analyze it, they had to find and clean up duplicate posts, find posts with missing data, clean up typos, and so on. So working with OpenRefine gave them the opportunity to do that sort of internal work, which will benefit them for a long time in the future. Next slide. And here, for example, you can see a page from the website of Statens historiska museer with one of their person authority posts, which now also contains a link to the Wikidata item of the person. Next slide. And as we are working on the visualization part, we have contracted a programmer who is honestly amazing at doing this sort of work, Albin Larsson, who has devised a couple of interesting prototypes which help us understand the data on Wikidata, which you can reach on the link on the screen. And in this example, we can see where the spouses of the monarchs of Sweden have come from through history. And by spouses, I obviously mean wives. Next slide. He also devised a prototype of a tool to compare the collections of the two museums on the same topic, which is very interesting because since the museums have different focuses, there's the art museum and the history museum, so you can see that they collect maybe different things about the same person, and they complement each other. Next slide. There has been a lot of training and education and new skills involved in the project. If you work at a cultural heritage institution and want to start working actively with Wikidata, here are some of the most important things, such as Sparkle queries, Grell, which is a scripting language used in OpenRefine, with which you can make complex string editing, and of course all the internal Wikidata stuff, like how it works, how the community makes decisions, and how to be a good member of this global community, and not just some outsider who comes in, makes an edit, and then disappears. Next slide. And why are we doing this? As many of you have mentioned, Wikidata is an important part of the linked open data landscape. It's a hub where data from many sources comes together. And an institution such as museum or library can use that data to enrich their own posts. If they develop their own in-house expertise, then they continue working on it for a long time, even without our help. And obviously, supporting and contributing to free and open knowledge is always right. Next slide. which I think should be the last. Next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you so much, and remember that if you want to learn more about the Wikimedia projects and working with them, seek out your local Wikimedia chapter, because this is exactly the sort of work we do and the sort of support that we provide. Thank you.